Hello, good people! How are you doing today? I am very glad to see you. Here it is midsummer. I have my coffee, my puppy, and I am ready to sweat. Today I want to tell you the story of Vasilisa the Beautiful, or as I like to call her, Vasilisa the Brave, and Baba Yaga, the dangerous witch of the woods. And after we have told this folklore story, I would like us to talk about how this tale can inspire us in our everyday life and the dark times that might be ahead of us. Before we jump in though, I would be super grateful if you could hit the subscribe button and the notification bell, and in exchange you'll get notified every time I publish a folktale, legend or mythology video, which is every Friday. Without further ado, I give you Vasilisa and Baba Yaga. Once upon a time, very far away and very, very long ago, there was a kingdom ruled by a Tsar. The castle was indeed bright and beautiful, but the land was wild, full of forest, dark and lovely. There were thatched cottages and fields, golden with grain. In one of these cottages there lived an old man, an old woman, and their daughter Vasilisa, whom they had conceived long after any thought of a child had left them, and they loved her very much. Their life was peaceful and stitched together by affection and by their little joys: the sigh of the wind carrying music in the sunset, the heavy pail of milk in the morning, the early dew of midsummer that makes one both beautiful and wise. But summer turned to winter and a sorrowful day came. An illness swept through the kingdom. The old woman became gravely ill. Feeling the arms of death already closing around her, she called her child Vasilisa to her bedside and told her, "Do as I tell you. Take good care of this doll and never show her to anyone. If ever anything happens to you, give the doll something to eat and it will help you always." And giving Vasilisa a last parting kiss, the old woman died. The both of them were sad, but after a while, the old man thought it wasn't right that Vasilisa had no mother. And so he married again. But despite her kind appearance, this woman was envious and cruel. Every time her father wasn't looking, she made fun of Vasilisa and sent her to do the hardest chores out in the snow and under the scorching midday sun. Her two daughters were just as bad, spiteful, mean, and impossible to please. Vasilisa of course felt very unhappy. Her stepmother and her stepsisters kept scolding her and making her do work beyond her strength. They hoped that she would grow thin and broken with the labor, that her spirit would be crushed and that her beauty would fade away. All day long they shouted at her, "Where are you, Vasilisa? Don't be slow, start the fire, knead the dough, wash the plates, milk the cows, scrub the floor." And Vasilisa did all that she was told to do. She waited on everyone and always got her chores done on time. And with every day that passed, she grew more confident, stronger, and more beautiful. Her great secret was that the doll always helped her in everything she did. Early in the morning, Vasilisa would milk the cow, and then locking herself in the pantry, she would give the doll a crumb of bread, a little milk, and she would say, "Come, little doll, drink your milk, my dear, and I will pour my troubles in your ear." Speaking of drinking. And she would comfort Vasilisa and help her in all the day's chores. Another summer passed like this, and then another autumn. One day, late in the year, the old man left home and wasn't expected for some time. The stepmother and the three sisters were left alone. They sat in the hut, and outside it was dark and pouring with rain, and the wind was howling like a hungry wild thing. Now, this hut sat right on the edge of the wood, and in the depths of this great forest lived none other than Baba Yaga, a cunning and sly witch who could gobble people up in the wink of an eye or help them in an impossible quest. To each of the three sisters, the stepmother gave a job to do. The first she set to weaving lace, second one to knitting stockings, and Vasilisa to spinning yarn. Then she put out all the lights of the house, and so she went to bed. "What are we to do?" cried the stepmother's two daughters. "It's dark in the hut, and we must work. Someone has to go and ask Baba Yaga for a light." Because obviously you go to the witch's house. "I'm not going," said the eldest. "I'm making lace and my needle is bright enough for me to see by." "I'm not going either," said the second one. "I'm knitting stockings and my two needles are more light than I will ever need." Then both of them shouted, "Vasilisa must go! Right this minute, Vasilisa!" And so they pushed her out of the hut and into the night. Darkness was about her, and the dense forest and the wolf wind. Vasilisa was frightened. She burst into tears and took the doll out of her pocket and said, "Oh, my dear little doll! They're sending me to Baba Yaga's house for light, and Baba Yaga eats people up, bones and all."
"Never you mind,"
the doll replied.
"You'll be all right."
"Thank you, little doll," said Vasilisa, even though she didn't quite believe it, and then she set off on her way. The forest rose like a dark wall, and in the sky above there was no sign of the crescent moon nor of any starlight. Vasilisa walked for a very long time. She was cold and scared and trembling. It was almost dawn now. Vasilisa walked on into the forest, stumbling and stubbing her toe against the tree roots. Drops of dew glistened on her hair, and her hands were cold and numb. The sun rose and it kissed Vasilisa and dried her tears and the dew on her braids. Vasilisa never stopped but walked on a whole day, and it was going towards evening when she came out into a small glade. She looked and she saw a hut, but it wasn't just any hut. The fence around it was made out of human bones and crowned with human skulls. The gate was no gate, but the bones of men's legs. The bolts were no bolts, but the bones of men's arms. And the lock was no lock, but a set of very sharp teeth. Vasilisa understandably was horrified and stood stock still, looking at it. Night descended on the glade. The skulls began to glow with an eerie light. Vasilisa shook with fear. She could not move her feet. All of a sudden, in this terrible place, she felt the earth rock under her. And there she was, Baba Yaga arriving, flying on a mortar, swinging her pestle like a whip, and sweeping the tracks away with a broom. She flew up to the gate and, sniffing the air, she said,
"Who goes there? I smell human flesh."
So Vasilisa came to Baba Yaga and bowed low and said very, very softly, "It is I, Vasilisa, Grandma. My stepsisters have sent me to ask you for a light."
"Oh, it's you,"
said Baba Yaga.
"Oh well, I know your stepmother. Very well then, you'll stay with me and work for me, and then we'll see what shall be seen."
And she shouted at the top of her voice,
"Come and lock to my bolt so strong. Open up my gate so wide."
The gate swung open. Baba Yaga and Vasilisa by her side walked through. Now past the gate there grew a birch tree, and it made as if to lash Vasilisa with its branches.
"Do not touch her, birch tree. It was I who brought her,"
said Baba Yaga, and walked on. They came to the house, and at the doorstep there lay a dog who made as if to bite Vasilisa.
"Do not touch her, dog. It was I who brought her."
Then they came inside the passage, where there was a grumbling cat who met them and made as if to scratch Vasilisa.
"Do not touch her,"
repeated Baba Yaga.
"It was I who brought her." "You see, Vasilisa,"
said the old witch,
"it is not easy to run away from me. My cat will scratch you, my dog will bite you, my tree will lash you, and my gate will not open for you."
Baba Yaga came into her room, stretched out on a bench, and called her maid.
"Come, black-braided maid, get my dinner ready for me."
And the black-braided maid came in to feed Baba Yaga. A pot of borscht and half a cow, 10 jugs of milk and a roasted sow, 20 chickens and 40 geese, 2 whole pies and an extra piece. Baba Yaga ate and drank everything, but she only gave Vasilisa a little piece of bread.
"And now, Vasilisa, take this sack of millet and pick it over seed by seed. And mind that you take out all the black bits, for if you don't, I shall eat you up."
Baba Yaga immediately closed her eyes and began to snore. Vasilisa, on the other hand, took the bread, took the doll out of her pocket and talked to her. "Come, little doll, eat this bread, my dear, and I'll pour my troubles in your ear. Baba Yaga has given me an impossible task, and if I don't complete it, she shall gobble me up," said the doll in reply.
"Do not weep and do not grieve. Close your eyes and go to sleep, for morning is wiser than evening."
and the moment that Vasilisa was asleep, she called.
Tomtits, pigeons, sparrows, hear me. There is work to do, I fear me. On your help, my feathered friends, Vasilisa's life depends.
And the birds came from every side, flocks and flocks and flocks of them. They began to chirp and coo, and they set out a great to-do. And before the moon had blinked, the sack was filled to the top with the good millet. Day was dawning. Baba Yaga woke up and asked,
Have you done all that I told you to do?
Yes, it's all done, Grandma. Baba Yaga seemed angry, but there was nothing to do. She snorted.
I am off to hunt and you take that sack filled with peas and poppy seeds. I want you to separate them into 2 different piles. If you don't do it, I shall eat you up.
Vasilisa took a crumb of bread, fed it to her doll and said, Do take pity on me, little doll, my dear. Please, just help me out. And the doll called out,
Come to me, mice of the house, of barn and of field. There is work to do.
The mice came running, and before even 1 hour was up, the work was already done. It was getting on towards evening, and the black braided maid set up the table for Baba Yaga's dinner, the eyes of the skulls glowing on the fence around them. The trees groaned and creaked, and Baba Yaga, who could gobble people up in the wink of an eye or help them in an impossible quest, arrived.
Have you done what I told you to do, Vasilisa?
Yes, it's all done, Grandma. Baba Yaga seemed rather angry, but there was nothing to be done, so she ate her dinner. Before she closed her eyes, she said,
Light the stove, black braided maid. When I wake up, I will roast and eat Vasilisa.
Vasilisa burst into tears. Taking out her doll, she put a crumb of bread in front of her. Come, little doll, have some bread, my dear, and I'll pour all my troubles in your ear. Baba Yaga wants to eat me in the morning. But even as she said this, she already knew what she must do. Vasilisa rushed to the black braided maid and said, Please, help me. I'll give you this precious handkerchief that I made myself. Very well, I'll help you. I'll take a long time heating the stove, and I'll make sure that Baba Yaga sleeps. Run away, Vasilisa. Then the cat rushed at her and made to scratch her, but she threw him a meat pie, and he did not touch her. Vasilisa ran down from the porch, and the dog was about to bite her, but she threw him a piece of bread, and he let her go. Vasilisa now started running across the yard and came close to the birch tree that was going to lash her, but she tied it with her beautiful ribbon, and the tree let her pass. Now the gruesome gate was about to shut before her, but Vasilisa took the time to grease its hinges, and the door opened and let her pass. Now Vasilisa ran into the dark forest, but then she remembered the light. What would she say to her stepmother? So she took one of the skulls from the fence that was still glowing with an eerie light, and she carried it through the forest. As for Baba Yaga, she woke up, stretched, and realized Vasilisa was not there. So she rushed into the passage and said,
Did you scratch Vasilisa as she ran past, my cat?
And the cat replied, No, she gave me a pie.
Did you bite Vasilisa as she ran by, my dog?
No, I let her pass. She gave me a piece of bread.
Birch tree, did you put Vasilisa's eyes out and lash her?
No, because she tied my branches with a beautiful ribbon. Baba Yaga ran to the gate.
Gate! Gate! Did you shut before her that Vasilisa might not pass?
No, I opened before her, for she greased my hinges.
It is as it may be.
And soon she forgot about Vasilisa in the way all ageless creatures tend to do. But Vasilisa ran home. There was still no light in the house. Her stepsisters rushed out and asked her, What took you so very long? We cannot seem to keep a light burning in the house. Maybe yours will work. So they brought the skull into the house, which I suggest you never do. No eerie glowing skulls indoors. It fixed its eyes on the stepmother and the stepsisters and burned them to a crisp. By morning, they were all reduced to cinder, except for Vasilisa, who remained unharmed. She took the ashes and the now dark skull and buried them in the garden, but she did not want to stay. So Vasilisa became a city girl. She lived with an old woman in her house. I am bored, sitting around all day doing nothing, Grandma. She calls everyone Grandma. Can you please get me some flax that I may spin and weave cloth? Vasilisa set out to spinning yarn. She spun, she wove, and the cloth turned out so fine that it could pass through the eye of a needle like thread. Have this, Grandma, she said. Sell it in the market and keep the money. The old woman took one look at it and said, Oh no, my dear, such cloth is only fit for a prince. Vasilisa sat by the window window, softly smiling and waiting. The old woman took the cloth to the palace where the prince saw it and became stunned by the beautiful snow-white cloth. He asked the woman to give it back to the person who had made it so they could sew a shirt for him. Vasilisa made 2 shirts, embroidered them with silver and studded them with pearls, made them as beautiful as she could think of, and gave them to the old woman, who took them to the palace. Vasilisa sat by the window, smiled and waited. After some time she could see some commotion. It was the Tsar's servants come to fetch the maker of these wonderful clothes.
"The prince bids you come to the palace,"
they said. Vasilisa went back to the palace with them, and the prince was smitten by her beauty. And after she had told him everything she had gone through and of her cunning plan to meet him, he admired both her courage and her wisdom. After a while, they happily married, and when Vasilisa's father finally returned, he went to live with them. And of course, the doll always remained in Vasilisa's pocket. And somewhere in a hut deep in the woods, in the middle of the night, Baba Yaga smiled. Okay, we are living through some tough times, to put it mildly, both personally and socially. I don't know anyone who isn't exhausted and struggling from being isolated, going through financial hardships, losing loved ones, just being absolutely uncertain of what the future is going to bring us. And as a society, we're also walking through the night, global hardships, questions about which way we should be governed, growing polarization, and of course the ever-present looming threat of climate change. We are headed somewhere that we haven't been before, and it is pretty scary. I think that this tale is encouraging in a small and whispered sort of way. She's teaching us that maybe we shouldn't work so very hard to please other people, but do let me know if you would like me to make a video on the anti-work movement and its folkloric roots. More to the point, this story is encouraging in 3 different ways. It's telling us that we are never alone. While Vasilisa has her magical straw doll, which I guess you don't have, she takes the time to establish relationships with other beings. We never know where help, encouragement, inspiration, or opportunities might come from. I do struggle with this, but being courageous enough to let ourselves be vulnerable is always going to help us. This story is telling us the universe can be on your side. Secondly, it says the trial itself might be the lesson. Now, I don't want to go everything happens for a reason. I don't think that's true. There are lots of things that happen to people that are never deserved and shouldn't happen at all. But I do believe, as the survivor of some of these experiences, that we can become brave by walking through the dark forest like Vasilisa. Became bolder and wiser, going from someone who simply endured the exploitation into someone who devised her own escape and created her own path in life. So in this story, and perhaps for us as well, the hut of Baba Yaga is a place to find a new way of being, to become something different. There are so many things that no one should ever go through, but whatever it is, hang on. And the third thing is that even if you're afraid, you should walk into the forest. This week on my Instagram, which you can get to through the link in the description, I asked what you thought courage really meant. Almost all of the answers repeated one single theme: being scared and doing the thing anyway. Admitting that we are not going to be perfect and doing the thing anyway. Accepting that we are going to be making ourselves uncomfortable and doing it anyway. So I think that Baba Yaga and Vasilisa are bringing us back to something that we already know. Whatever it is that your own inner truth wants you to do, moving away, leaving a relationship or a path that you've invested a lot of yourself in but no longer aligns with who you are, creating something entirely new and risky, making a friend, or even taking steps to creating a more resilient community to withstand our scary shared future. Whatever it is, it's worth doing. So tell me, what is that thing that your brave inner voice wants you to do? Did you like the story of Baba Yaga and Vasilisa the Brave? Tell me down in the comments, and do not forget to like the video, subscribe, and see you next Friday. Where do I put this? Not there. Baba Yaga. Wonderful, pretty coffee cup.